Yo, it's your boy Reggie. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Orlando Magic. I'm going to be going through the roster and we're going to talk about who's staying, who's going. Got my categories, I got the roster here. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to start with the boring ones. Paolo, there's nothing really to talk about there. Obviously, Paolo's going to be staying. Paolo's the building block. Paolo's the guy. The number one pick. Second year All Star. He's just improved so much, and he has so much room to grow. I mean, and I think that when we really make this roster complete and add more shooting, I think you're going to see his playmaking skills really take off. But man, just second year All Stars. I can't stress that enough. He's been outstanding. Um, and yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's staying. He's the building block. And also we got Franz Wagner. Nothing really to talk about there. He's going to be staying. Franz had an up and down year. But when he was on, he was on. Obviously, there needs to be a bit more consistency with his 3-point shooting. But overall, Franz is he's one of the building blocks. He's been very good. I know he had a tough game seven. He did have a really bad game seven, but I think ultimately it's going to be good for him. I think that performance in game seven is going to be good for him. I think it's something he's going to remember, and he's going to be a lot better for it. So yeah, Franz and Paulo, those are our guys. Those are the building blocks. There's nothing really to talk about there. Those guys are definitely staying. And we're going to get to a few others here that I really don't really feel one way or the other about. Who's this? Kevon, who was this guy's name? Yeah, Kevon Harris. That's his name. Kevon Harris. Pretty much the stay bench guy, locker room guy. He can stay or he cannot. I honestly don't care. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the don't care category. It's no disrespect. I just, he's not someone who plays very much. Seems like the guys really like him a lot in the locker room. So yeah, he can stay if he wants. And Admiral Schofield, I'm gonna put in the same thing. Not someone that plays that much. So I mean, they could stay. Yeah. And was this Trevian Queen? Put him in the same category as that. Don't care. Um, I feel like there's a couple times he actually did play a bit when we got a lot of injuries. Didn't look bad, but ultimately didn't play much. So go ahead and put him in the don't care category. Okay. Now we have Caleb Houston. Um, Caleb's another guy who played a bit when we had a lot of injuries. I feel like there was one game this season where he was on, where he was like burying threes, and it was for a second. I thought, yo, maybe this guy should be playing more. But ultimately, he kind of fell back to inconsistency. He doesn't make a ton. I think it's like $2 million on the cap, so it doesn't really hurt as much. I could definitely see that if we were to get aggressive, that he could be somebody that could be like a throw in a trade if we decide to make some moves this offseason. So for that, I think he'll probably be back, but I'm going to go ahead and put him in the could be traded category. Just because with that cap number, I think that he could be a throw in. I could see a scenario we just toss him into a trade. All right. Anthony Black. So this is interesting with Anthony Black because when we drafted him, I was not a fan. I felt like we had a backcourt that desperately needed shooting, and we added a backcourt player who couldn't shoot. I didn't understand why we drafted him, but I must admit, when he played this year, he was solid. He was surprisingly decent. And so I think there is a lot there that he can grow and he can become possibly our starting point guard. But the question is, when are we going to give him the keys to the starting lineup? When are we going to do that? Because you don't draft a guy this high for him to just sit on the bench. And once we got healthy this year, he did sit on the bench. And I think that most people do look at this team and say, we need to add a point guard who can shoot and who can distribute. And I just don't know if he projects to be that. He did show some flashes, but I think when we had this kind of season that we had where we were in the playoffs, not the play-in, but we were in the playoffs in a game seven. The question is going in next year. I think it's a fair expectation to say I want to be back in the playoffs next year. I mean, we were a game away from going to the second round, so I think it's fair to say I want to be in the playoffs again next year. And so we have to get better. And does putting him in the starting lineup make us better next year? I don't know that it does, but at the same time, is he the backup? Because we already have a backup who we're going to talk about in Cole Anthony. So does he become the backup? So the Magic have a lot to think about when it comes to Anthony Black, and just the fact that where are we going next year? I think because we overachieved so much this year, it's it's a little harder to sell a guy who might be good in a couple years when I feel like next year a lot of people, and myself included, think we can make a jump. So we got to get better. And a lot of the trades that I've seen, as far as us making trades for guys like DeJounte Murray or Trae Young, it would include Anthony Black. But do we really want to do that though? It's a tough one. It's a tough one because I don't know if he stays, what's his role? Are we going to put him in the starting lineup? I don't know. So for that, I'm going to put Anthony Black. I think he's probably staying, but I'm actually going to put him. Huh, I'm going to put him in the probably staying. I'm gonna put him in a probably staying. I just think that this front office doesn't really make those kind of crazy trades. I don't know if they want to give up on the kid after 1 year, especially when he did show some flashes. I don't know what the role is going to be because we got to get him going. I don't know. It's hard for me to see us moving on from him, though. So I'm going to put him in the probably staying category. Then we have Chuma Okeke. Chuma's another guy who, once he got some minutes, when we had a bunch of injuries, he played okay. He did play solid. It's just he just has never been able to stay consistent. And as his inconsistency continued, he just fell further and further on the depth chart and just didn't get a ton of minutes. I think he's actually a restricted free agent. So I'm honestly expecting maybe a team to give him a look because I still think Chuma could be a decent rotational player. Certainly not a starter, but possibly a decent rotational player if he just got more minutes, and those minutes aren't going to come here. Um, it's a shame 'cause I did think he had a lot of potential. I remember him at Auburn right before he had that injury. It definitely looked like he was a guy that had some real potential. Um, but yeah, he's not going to get minutes here. And ultimately, I think a team was going to give him a decent offer, and I don't think we have any reason to match it. So I'm going to put Chuma in the gone category. I think Chuma's going to be gone. And we have Gary Harris. A lot of injuries. Gary Harris had a lot of little knick-knack injuries. When he played, I thought he was solid. Not great, but solid. I think we can definitely look to improve there. Um, I wouldn't be mad if they brought him back, especially if there's just not a lot out there in free agency. But I ultimately think that Gary Harris is going to be gone. Don't think they bring him back. All right, Goga Patazi. So Goga, again, when we had injuries, he stepped in for Wendell Carter Jr. and he played very well. He played very well. He played so well that I think a lot of people felt like maybe Goga should be the starter, especially because when Wendell Carter came back, he was really struggling, and myself included. I'm like, yo, put Goga back in. Goga was balling, man. Let's stick with him. Um, I think that with him being third on the depth chart as the big man, and I don't think this is a very strong center free agency market. I think a team is going to offer Goga a decent contract to be a backup, and I think he will and should take it. He's definitely earned the right to get some minutes somewhere, and I think Goga is probably gone. I mean, maybe he just really likes to be in Orlando, and maybe he'll take a contract to be a third stringer, but I just don't think he should. He played well this year. He deserves the opportunity to play. And I wish him the best, but I do think he's probably gone. Um, all right, so we have Jet Howard. Jet Howard pretty much didn't play much this year. Another guy we drafted high with our second first round pick last year. I was unhappy with both the picks we made last year, Anthony Black and Jet Howard. I thought both of those were the wrong picks. Jet Howard is it's a tough one to call. I mean, he didn't play. Um, I guess you got to find some minutes for him this year. Maybe he takes some minutes from some of the guys that I said are probably gone, like Gary Harris. But kind of the same thing with Anthony Black, though. Like, are we really gonna be putting a lot of minutes on a guy who couldn't even get on the roster last year? Like, I don't know, because again, I think that we are looking to win next year. Um, I'm gonna say Jet Howard. Jet Howard, he's pretty much in the same boat as Anthony Black. Like, I could see them involved in possibly a deal, but I don't know. I'm gonna put him in the probably staying. I just don't see us moving on from these young guys this early. So I'm gonna say probably staying on Jet Howard. All right, got Jonathan Isaac. Um, J.I. was definitely the backbone of our defense. He was outstanding last year. He was so good that I do believe that he was able to stay healthy and play more games. He should be the defensive player of the year. That's how impactful he was on defense. Our team looks different when Jonathan Isaac is out there. And obviously the injuries are still a concern with J.I. I believe we actually have the right to void his contract next year, but there's no way we're doing that. Like, we're going to bring J.I. back. He's going to be in the last year of his deal. We'll see how he looks this year. I mean, if he can just stay healthy, it should be an interesting free agent market for him next year if he stays healthy this year, because he's very impactful defensively. And in the playoffs, man, he was awesome. He hit some threes, and he played really well. Um, so I think that we can pretty confidently put Jonathan Isaac in the staying category. I don't think there's any chance we don't pick that option up. All right. Joe Ingles. Joe was the veteran of the team. Seemed like the guys really liked him. They loved playing with him. You could tell he was the fun locker room guy. He was the older guy for the young guys to talk to. It was cool. We have an $11 million team option, and I think we probably can find a better way to spend $11 million than Joe Ingles. So I don't believe we're going to pick that up. Now, could Joe sign back for a lot less money? He could, but I kind of think that once we decline that option, there's probably going to be some other teams that think that they could bring Joe Ingles to be kind of the same role, locker room guy. Maybe somebody comes in every so often, and maybe a better team offers him that. So I think there's a chance Joe could come back at a lower price. But I think once we decline that option, I kind of have a feeling someone else is going to offer him a better deal. So for that, I am going to put Ingles in the gone category. I think he's probably gone. All right. Markelle Fultz. All right, so Markelle, again, injuries, had a lot of injuries during his time in Orlando, but he's played fairly well. I thought he gave us some really good minutes in the playoffs around maybe game 3. I thought he played pretty well. Obviously, we know the issues he's had with shooting. He does a lot of things well for us, though. And it's been awesome seeing Markelle just kind of get back, because obviously when we made the trade for him from Philly, he was just as a broken project, and it's been cool. And I think that he has a place in the NBA. I think that there's going to be teams that are interested in him because he is a free agent. And a team I would look out for is the Phoenix Suns. I think the Suns could really use a guy like Markelle to maybe be able to get him on a cheap deal. Um, so yeah, I don't think we're going to make any attempts to sign Markelle back. I really just don't think so. Ultimately, you know what we need. We need shooting. We need a backcourt that can spread the floor, and I think Markelle just doesn't give that to us. And at this point, I don't see any scenario that he's going to be able to do it at any point. I think Markelle is who he is at this point. Could still definitely be a contributor. I think if he went to Phoenix, he would definitely contribute. But as far as his time in Orlando, I think it's come to an end. So I'm going to put Markelle Fultz in the gone category. And that takes us to Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell seems like every year he's good for an injury. He gets an injury that keeps him out for 10, 15 games, it seems like every year. But I think when you saw him in the playoffs this year, because when he came back from the injury, he definitely struggled a bit. But in the playoffs, when they made the change and they put him back in the starting lineup, that definitely turned the series around. And Wendell is on a good contract as well. I think he's got $10 million next year and $11 million the next. Good contract, good value. So the question with Wendell, though, is if we are to make a move, if we are to do something to get a point guard in here that can do the things that we need, the free agent market isn't great there. I mean, I know Tyus Jones is the guy that a lot of people talk about, but I don't know if I necessarily want to get into a bidding war for Tyus Jones. He's a good player and all, but I don't know if I want to get into a bidding war for a guy like that. And so if we're going to make a trade, who are the tradable assets that we have? And I think Wendell Carter is one of those guys. He's a very good player on a very good contract. So could there be a scenario where we move Wendell Carter and instead offer a contract to Goga Batadze and have him become the starter? That's the starting center. Is that a possibility? I don't know. Goga does not stretch the floor like Wendell can. So for me, I don't know if I would do that. But again, Wendell is a tradable asset. He's something I think a lot of teams would like to have on their team. So for that, I am actually going to put Wendell Carter in the could be traded. I think he could be moved. I think it's very possible they could look to move him to improve the backcourt. All right, now we have Mo Wagner. Mo is awesome, man. Like he's definitely a fan favorite. Plays with a lot of energy, a lot of passion. The older brother of Franz Wagner, and they got Shaq's got the Wagner boys. We got that whole thing going. But yeah, he's definitely a energy guy. Love having him on the team. He's everything you want in the backup center. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to pick up the option on Mo Wagner. I think he will be back with the team next year. All right, and then we have Suggs. So interesting thing about Suggs, man. Like when we drafted him, I was happy with it. But after his rookie season, I was really down on Suggs. It just didn't look like he had it, and he improved so much this year. I said Jonathan Isaac was the backbone of our defense, but Suggs is the heartbeat of our defense. I was happy. It was good to see him make. I think it was second team all defense. He definitely deserved it. So yeah, Suggs is great. Suggs is actually the reason why I don't see any scenario where we're going to trade for Trae Young. Because I've heard people say that Trae Young is going to be a guy we could target in a trade. And I just don't see it because I think that if we call Atlanta, there's no way Atlanta doesn't pick up the phone and say, is Suggs on the menu? You know, and if Suggs is not on the menu, I don't see any scenario where Atlanta's going in the restaurant. They're not going to the restaurant if Suggs isn't on the menu. And on the flip side of that, I don't see any way we could bring Trae Young on our team if we don't have Suggs next to him. We have to keep our defensive identity if we were to bring Trae Young on our team. We have to keep that defensive identity. So I don't see any scenario where that trade happens. But Suggs, the way he played this year, like he has shown that he might be the third person, like our third option. Like he shows some real flashes offensively this year as well. So yeah, I'm definitely putting Suggs in the absolutely staying category. I think he deserves it. He was really good this year. And that you could tell that playoff experience was great for him too. That was his kind of environment. It was awesome. And last but not least, we have one of my favorite players on the team, Cole Anthony. Oh man, Cole, he started off the season really good. He looked like a guy that could possibly be a sixth man of the year. Like he was balling early in the season. And then he just fell off the cliff bad. And he played some of the worst basketball of his career. And wasn't great in the playoffs either. I think it was maybe one or two games where he showed something, but he really struggled in the playoffs as well. He signed a new contract, a kind of team-friendly deal. I think Cole is probably staying, but I could see him move because he is on a very good contract. Um, Cole's a tough one. I am actually Cole does a lot of good things. Like he's a guard that is not afraid to jump in there and rebound. And when he gets hot, man, he's a really good scoring punch off the bench. And the fans love him. I love him. I'm a huge Cole Anthony fan. He's great. His post-game interviews, all that stuff is awesome. I'm still gonna put Cole Anthony in the could be traded category. I just think that there's a possibility that there's a trade out there that we could pair him with Wendell Carter along with some draft picks. and possibly get somebody we're looking for to help out the backcourt. I think that is possible that could happen. Um, so yeah, honestly, I think that these guys here in the probably staying and could be traded category are all guys I can see possibly getting traded this year. I think all these guys are very possible. All right, but yeah, so that's where I got it, man. So I think the guarantees are definitely Paulo Franz, Jonathan Isaac, Suggs, and Mo Wagner. Those are guaranteed. Those guys are going nowhere, and I think it should be interesting the rest of the offseason. So yeah, that's how I got it. Appreciate you coming to the channel. Go Magic. Peace.